Hi folks, this is Jay. Hope you're okay today. It's good to see you. I want to talk to you about methodology, evolution and methodology, um, and how important methodology is. There's a guy called Ernest Mayer, I think it is. It might be Meyer or Mayer, but he was a world authority on evolution. He's recently died. I listened to a lot of his videos and I read a paper of his which I really enjoyed. And in the paper, actually, I'll just get it for you. Um, get the paper for you. This is the paper. It's Darwin's Influence on Modern Thought. Now, Ernest Mayr is a world authority in evolution. He died. And he says this on page 2 of his paper. He recently died, but he was a great thinker in evolutionary biology. And he said, evolution biology, in contrast with physics of chemistry, is a historical science. The evolutionist attempts to explain events and processes that have already taken place. Laws and experiments are inappropriate techniques for the explication of such events and processes. Instead, one constructs, here it is in quotes, a historical narrative consisting of tentative reconstruction of the particular scenario that led to the events one is trying to explain. So this is Darwin's Influence on Modern Thought by Ernest Mayr, a world authority in evolution in his time, only recently died. I'll read that again because it's really important. Evolutionary biology, in contrast with physics and chemistry, is a historical science. The evolutionist attempts to explain events and processes that have already taken place. Laws and experiments are inappropriate techniques for the explication of such events and processes. Instead, one constructs, here it is, one constructs a historical narrative consisting of a tentative reconstruction of particular scenario that led to the events one is trying to explain. So basically, what he's saying is, look, evolution is about, he goes on to say, evolution is about using ideas to reconstruct history. We look at history, we reconstruct it, looking at processes and events that could have happened. Okay? It's not just it's not like cosmology or something like that. That's what he's saying. And so I think that what I find surprising is, if that's the case, then the dogmatism of the evolutionist, because everybody knows when you're looking at history, there are different ways of looking at history. You can look at history from a postmodern perspective. You're looking at history from a neo-Marxist position, or a Christian position, or an Islam. In other words, looking at history, we can look at it, people can look at it from different angles. What I find is that's not the case with evolution. It's a historical discipline. That's what he's saying. It's a historical discipline, and yet there's very little room for anybody to actually come in with any different models of understanding that evidence, which is surprising when you think about history. There has to be challenges to methodology. There has to be clear justification for your methodology. And yet methodology here is just a given, without any real thought or consideration. And that is something that I find intellectually unacceptable. If I was talking about the resurrection of Christ, I would have to justify my methodology, and I would have to argue my case against other methodologies, and we would have to come to agreement of some lines of agreement on how we see history, but we'd have to we would be able to look at it from different angles. But in the end of the day, facts speak for themselves. But there has to be a discussion about the interpretation of the facts, and a willingness to consider that the interpretation of the facts are being manipulated by our methodology, i.e. our way of understanding history. So, in other words, this understanding of evolution by Ernest Mayr should allow more freedom of discussion and debate in critiquing evolution. But actually, we don't see that in the academic sphere. When we're talking about history, we have to be very, very careful about how we conduct ourselves. And it seems to me that evolutionary biologists are gung-ho about it and not really willing to consider questions about their methodology, questions about events and processes that they use to interpret their information. And all I'm asking for is the ability to question, the right to question, and the right to challenge a historical opinion that might have some facts, but I just think that we can question any science, but when it comes to history particularly, we have to be particularly careful and particularly cautious, and I don't see that in the evolutionary propaganda that I see around me, and academics when they're talking about evolution. I think what I'm trying to say is that our understanding of history will influence our understanding of the data. If you have a Marxist understanding of history, it will influence your understanding of data. If you have a Hegelian understanding of history, it will influence your understanding of data. If you have a atheist, skeptical understanding of history, it will influence your understanding of data. If you have a postmodern understanding of history, it will influence your understanding of data. If you have a creationist understanding of history, it will influence your understanding of data. If you have an evolutionary understanding of history, it will influence your understanding of data. So in other words, our methodology needs to be questioned and defended. How much of our methodology is actually looking at the data and then pushing the data into our construct, rather than actually let the data speak for itself? Those are my thoughts.